race week in Japan. And if you're only flying in and out of Suzuka, we need to talk because, yes, the Japanese Grand Prix is iconic. The fans, next level. The circuit, legendary. But Japan is not a tick the race and leave destination. It's a full-blown cultural experience. In this episode, we're talking about where to stay, how to survive the travel chaos, where to eat ramen for $10, yes please, and why 7-Eleven in Japan is basically a tourist attraction, and all the places beyond Tokyo that might just blow your mind. In this episode, we're talking to Japanese travel specialist Tess Moone from Tess Somewhere. So if you're heading to the Japanese Grand Prix, save this episode because we're doing Japan properly. Lights out and away we go to Japan.
Are you ready?
It's lights out and away we go!
Let's do it.
Hello, and welcome back to Away We Go podcast. I'm your host, Diane Bortoletto, and today I'm in Perth, back in the city. I've got a really special episode for you guys today. We're going to be talking all about Japan. Joining me is a Japanese expert, Tess Moone from Tess Somewhere. She is a travel blogger, photographer, and professional level ramen enthusiast. Tess has, half a dozen trips to Japan under her belt, and she's written content about Japan, detailed itineraries, what to do in Japan. Welcome to the show, Tess.
Thanks, Diane. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm definitely a Japan expert and not an F1 expert, so I'll be talking to more the Japanese side of things today.
For anybody who's heading to the Japanese Grand Prix, the Japanese Grand Prix is held in Suzuka, which is in the Mie prefecture. Around the Grand Prix itself, accommodation is pretty limited. So most people choose to stay in Nagoya, but there's also shuttle buses from Tokyo, from Kyoto, and Nagoya, of course. And there's train stations as well, but they can get really crowded. What you want to do if you go to Japan is allow some extra time to soak in the amazing Japanese culture and make the most of this beautiful country. So Tess, if people only have an extra day in Japan, what would you suggest that they do?
Well, first of all, I'd suggest they book more than one extra day. I think minimum 7 days would be required to even scratch the surface. On my last trip, which was trip number 6 to Japan, I spent 7 days in Tokyo alone. So it just goes to show you there's so much to see and do, even in places that you've visited before. But if you do only have 1 day, gosh, it's so hard to choose. If you're based in Nagoya, which is where I actually just went for the first time in my most recent trip, Nagoya is very different to Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto, which is the traditional Golden Route itinerary, which is probably most typical for most first-timers, and I do definitely recommend it. They're popular, and they're popular for good reason, so it's definitely the best way to get a taste of Japan. Nagoya probably isn't on most first-timers' itinerary. As I said, I only went on my last trip, so that was trip 6 for me that I finally made it there. But Tokyo is my absolute favorite place in Japan, even though I've been there over 6 times. And as I mentioned, I spent a week there alone last year. Tokyo is just this bustling metropolis. It's crazy to comprehend how big it is until you get there. 1 day, you're barely going to graze the surface. So, for example, there's all these different neighborhoods, which are their own cities in their own right. So, you've got places like Shinjuku, where there's lots of nightlife, the famous big gorilla head in the nightlife area of Kabukicho. We've got Abe-Hakuba, which is the electric town, which is just full of anime and the buzzing, flashing signs. You've got Shimokitazawa, which is full of vintage shopping and lots of cool, quirky cafes. And then you've got even areas like the polished Ginza, where you have these really glam department stores with beautiful displays. So it's crazy to think about the scale of these. Shinjuku alone is bigger than any city in Australia, and that's just one of the districts within Tokyo itself. So there's definitely a lot to take in and explore and do. I wouldn't consider myself a city person, but there's something about Tokyo that it feels like, as I said, you're kind of visiting, 10 different destinations in one. And what I love is even in such a big, crazy, busy city, you can find these little peaceful pockets. So when we were there for cherry blossom season, we went to Shinjuku-goen, which is this big park in the middle of Shinjuku, so in the middle of the city. And it was absolutely teeming with people to see the sakura blooming. And we still found these little pockets within there that were just so quiet and calm. There's all these little hidden shrines that you can go visit. So if you don't make it to Kyoto to see the famous Fushimi Inari shrine, which is the one with the orange gates, There's like two little mini versions in Tokyo. One that's a bit more well known, but there's also a more hidden one, which I share on my blog that visitors can seek out, which again, you wouldn't feel like you're in the middle of Tokyo. It feels more like you're in a quiet back street in Kyoto.
I just wanted to tell people that last year, the Japanese Grand Prix put on the F1 Tokyo Fan Festival. If you're going to be in Japan for the Grand Prix, you might be able to extend your Formula One experience. First-time visitors, like if they land in Tokyo, how tricky is it to navigate things like public transport or, are there Ubers there as well and taxis? Like, what's the best way of getting around?
So my number one tip for people coming to Japan is to make sure you have a reliable internet connection on your phone, because Google Maps will become your best friend. You'll religiously consult it to get around. It's very overwhelming if you're trying to navigate public transport without it, but with Google Maps, it's honestly a breeze. One of the things I love about Japan is the measured efficiency with which they do everything and just how optimized everything is in Japan. So for example, in Google Maps, they won't just tell you to catch the subway train A from location to location. It will tell you where to get on, because stations such as Shinjuku, they're so big, they might have 20 or 30 different entrances and exits. So Google Maps will tell you which entrance is closest to you to get you to your train line. And then it will also even tell you which carriage to get on the particular train for the fastest exit upon your arrival station. So it's just things like that that make it so easy. And all the train, subway, Shinkansen, buses, all the public transport is all synced into Google Maps. So it can feel overwhelming at first, but once you work it out, it makes it a breeze to get around.
Is train transport something that you need to book in advance, or could you just go to Google Maps and go, right now I want to take a train somewhere? What's the best way of organising yourself?
So within Tokyo, for example, or any city like Osaka or Nagoya, you'd just be able to the subway on the day. There's no need to book that in advance. I recommend you get an IC card. So in Tokyo, that's called the Suica. You might have heard of the Suica card. You can actually get a digital one on your iPhone, which is really handy these days. Unfortunately, they don't have the digital version for Android, but you can still pick up a physical card. And that's sort of like a prepaid transport card where you just tap on, tap off to navigate the subway. When it comes to getting the Shinkansen, which is the famous high-speed train that connects cities rurally. So, for example, if you wanted to go from Tokyo to Osaka, you'd get the Shinkansen. They go up to 130 kilometers an hour. So really fast, really spacious, really efficient. They are very punctual to the minute in all Japanese trains. And that's something that you could buy tickets in advance, but I've never bought tickets in advance out of my 6 trips. I found you can just buy tickets on the day, or if you're worried about it, you could buy them a day or two beforehand at the station for travel in a couple of days' time. You did also ask just before about Ubers. I would just mention that Uber itself doesn't function in Japan in terms of like rideshare services, but Uber does actually operate as an app to actually just call taxis. So we actually have used Uber quite a bit on my last trip just to reserve the taxis, because it means you don't have to worry about telling your driver where you want to go, because it's all done through the app, which is obviously great when there's a language barrier.
Japan has been on the hot list of every traveller for probably since COVID really. Before that, Japan was always seen as a really expensive destination, especially for Australians to go to. What's the comparison of costs to Australia, right? Just for things like transport, trains, meals, taxis, that kind of thing.
I think about a city like Tokyo, for example. I actually don't think it's that expensive personally. So, for example, in Tokyo, you could get a basic hotel for around $100, $150 a night in Aussie dollars. If you were to go to any other city in the world like London, New York, comparable to Tokyo, in terms of size and scale, you wouldn't be able to get a hotel for that price. That's obviously for the very basic. You obviously can spend a lot more. But one of my favorite little budget places in Tokyo, I think we've spent, $60 or $70 a night to stay there at a little guest house. So you definitely don't have to spend a lot. I do think food is cheaper than Australia, cheap and plentiful, because there's so much amazing food in Japan. A bowl of ramen might cost you 1,000 yen, which is about 10 Aussie dollars. And, that's dinner done and dusted. Or if you're like me and my husband, sometimes lunch and dinner in the same day. But yeah, in terms of transport, that's where costs do stack up a little bit. The trains are relatively expensive. So the Shinkansen might cost, say, $150 to get from Tokyo to Osaka. And if you do choose to get Ubers, so the taxis around, they are comparatively more expensive than public transport.
Good tip. And since we're talking about Tokyo at the moment, like what should you eat when you're visiting Tokyo? And is Japan like Italy and other countries where there's regional specialities?
Yeah, definitely. So in Tokyo, you could probably eat anything you wanted in the world. The Japanese make amazing Japanese food, of course, but they also do Western food really well. One of the best bowls of pasta I've ever had was in Tokyo, for example.
Wow.
Yeah, so I guess I don't think Tokyo per se has any specialty, but when you start going to places like Osaka, they're famous for the takoyaki, which is the fried octopus balls, which are better than they sound. And you can go places like Hiroshima, where they're famous for a particular style of okonomiyaki. So the Hiroshima style okonomiyaki, which is like a savory Japanese pancake. I love that one. And then each regional town will have its own food specialty as well. So I just went to Takayama on a previous trip, which is in the Japanese Alps, and they're famous for their hira beef. Probably most people have heard about Kobe beef, which I went to Kobe and had Kobe beef. Most recently, on our last trip when we went to Nagoya, the regional specialty is grilled eel, which is called hitsumabushi. So I had grilled eel in Nagoya on my last trip, which was quite delicious, actually.
Really? So it's like grilled eel. And I'm guessing they've got it marinated or some sort of sauce with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in a really rich, it's like almost barbecued, and it's quite a rich kind of soy sauce base, but a bit sweeter. So I'm not sure what's in the sauce. And then you get sort of rice and little sides along with it, and you can eat it in several different ways. So they say, first you get a bowl of soup and it says put just your eel with your rice. And then what you might do is once you've had a few mouthfuls of that, you'll mix in your soup with your rice and eat it that way as well.
Yeah, right. Interesting. So that's Tokyo. In Nagoya, you said that was your first time there on your last trip. What can visitors look forward to there, and what are some of the things that they really should do?
Yeah, Nagoya was for us the base for us to do a day trip to the nearby Kiso Valley. So we weren't expecting to do too much in Nagoya itself, but it did surprise us because there are quite a few kind of unique things to do. In Nagoya, they've got a castle. So, Japan is famous for its feudal castles. Nagoya has one which unfortunately is closed to visitors for the inside. So a lot of the castles you can go into the interior. This one is closed due to renovation. But they do have a really beautifully reconstructed palace on the castle grounds. So you can go in and see really beautiful architecture with these screen paintings. So it's just the level of detail is really beautiful. So that's called the Honmaru Palace, which is on the Nagoya castle grounds. We didn't actually pop in, but I've heard really good things about the Shinkansen Museum. If there's any train aficionados, that's quite popular to learn about the Shinkansen and the history of them. We also spent a lot of time just exploring the downtown area. They've got a big temple called the Kannon Temple, Misu Kannon Temple. And the day we were there, it was really lucky because there was a flea market set up. They only hold it one day a month, and we just happened to be there on the day of this flea market. So we visited the temple and then looked at all these little, quirky trinkets being sold by elderly Japanese people. So it was quite an experience, as well as walking through their kind of downtown street where they've got lots of little, food stalls and shopping. I picked up a secondhand kimono, which was one of my favorite souvenirs from my last trip. There's this big store there which sells secondhand kimonos. So had a lot of fun browsing through hundreds of kimonos and picking one out to take home.
Wow. Kimonos are quite expensive, aren't they? Normally.
Real kimonos, yes. These, technically, when I say I bought a kimono, I actually bought a yukata, which is a cotton robe. So it's kind of like a cotton kimono. Real kimonos are usually silk, so they're quite expensive. If you do have an extra day to spare in Nagoya, I'd recommend doing the Nakasendō hike, which is, as I mentioned, the reason why we based ourselves in Nagoya. It's about 2 hours away by train, and you go up into the mountains of the Kiso Valley, where you've got they're called post towns. Back in the day, they used to have to deliver the post between Kyoto and Tokyo, and then people would walk through the mountains and they'd stay at these little post towns. So that's where they got the name. And they're really beautiful architecture, Edo period style houses. So it kind of feels like, you're walking through a village from 100 years ago. So we did the hike between Magome and Tsumago. And that's a really beautiful 8-kilometer hike, walking through cedar forests, passing waterfalls, little tea house halfway through where a volunteer hands out free tea to hikers. So that was a really beautiful experience and a great way to get a big dose of nature amongst all the city time we spent.
That'd be such a lovely contrast to have after spending some time in Tokyo or any big city, or also spending time at the Grand Prix where you're just surrounded by thousands and thousands of fans in close proximity, just to be out there in space and in nature. So that 8-kilometre hike, Tess, is that like a round trip, or do you have to go 8 kilometres there and then another 8 kilometres back?
That's one way. Could just get a train from Tsumago at the end all the way back to Nagoya. So it can be really easily done as that kind of one-way hike with a train ride back. So I actually just wrote an article about that recently. So I've got a full guide on my blog if anyone's interested in learning more about that.
Well, we'll put a link in the show notes to that and all your Japan information for guests to check out. The other thing in Nagoya that you might not have clocked, Tess, probably because you're not a total rev head like the rest of us, is that there is a Toyota museum in Nagoya. Well, it's 80 kilometres southwest of the Suzuka circuit. Yeah, it's a 25-minute drive from Nagoya. So anybody that's interested in the history of Toyota, one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world, yeah, that would be a must visit. Okay, so that's Nagoya. What about things to do and see and eat in Osaka?
So Osaka is a really interesting comparison to Tokyo. For me, it's more grungy, it's a bit more urban, not as polished as Tokyo. I think most people will say they either love Tokyo or they love Osaka. So obviously for me, I'm more of I love Tokyo Bandcamp. But Osaka is really cool because, again, there's so much different stuff you can do. Dotonbori is kind of the main nightlife area in downtown Osaka. That's where you can get lots of street food. You can get the takoyaki octopus balls and just eat those. Oh, actually, I should say it is frowned upon to walk and eat in Japan. So if you do get little street food, you normally kind of stand outside the store where you got it. There's lots of ramen places, lots of sushi. I actually went on my last trip in Osaka. One of the biggest sushi trains in Japan is in Osaka. It's so efficient. You just order on an iPad and it gets delivered to your booth. So that's good fun. Yeah, what else would you eat in Osaka? We've had really good fluffy pancakes in Osaka. I'm not sure if that's where they originated, but this was about 10 years ago. So I think the fluffy pancake craze kind of started off around then. And it's now obviously spread to even little old Perth does the big Japanese fluffy pancakes. But that was where I first got it 10 years ago in Osaka.
The octopus balls. Is it a dumpling or is it like a little meatball? Like what is?
It kind of looks like arancini. I describe it as most similar to arancini, except it doesn't have rice inside. It's some form of batter with little bits of octopus in it.
Also in Osaka, there's Universal Studios. Is that right?
Yes, Universal Studios is incredible. I highly recommend visiting. I've been twice now. They have added a few more sections to it over the years, but the first time we went to mainly because of the main draw card at that time was the Harry Potter Magical Wizarding World, which is so magic. It feels like you're on the set of Harry Potter. More recently, they've added Super Nintendo World, which is absolutely incredible if you love any of the Nintendo games. My husband and I are big Nintendo fans, so that was an incredible experience. And I think they've most recently opened up a Donkey Kong World section as well.
Oh,
so the park is huge. It takes you all day to walk around it, and the rides are incredible. The lines are also quite large, so I do recommend looking into buying an express pass if you get the opportunity. They do sell out, but that helps you skip the line of some of the bigger attractions in the park.
Sounds so cool, a Donkey Kong World. Wow.
The Super Nintendo World feels like you're walking through a video game, and then when you're in Harry Potter World, as I said, it's like you're walking through the set of a Harry Potter movie, drinking butterbeer. It's an amazing thing, and you will definitely do a lot of shopping if you let your wallet open because you want to buy all the things. I nearly walked away with a full wizard robe set and a wand.
You can pre-book tickets for Universal Studios in Japan?
Yeah, I tend to get my tickets for those types of attractions from Klook. They're one of the best ways, kind of they're an authorised reseller for tickets. Normal tickets are quite easy to get on Klook. You don't need to pre-book that quite far in advance, but if you want one of those express passes, which allow you to skip the line on some of the more popular attractions, they do only have a limited number of express passes, so you'll want to book those a couple of months in advance if possible.
Right. So how do you spell Klook, Tess?
Klook.
Klook. Right. So head to Klook, pre-book your tickets to the Universal Studios in Osaka. Also in Osaka, floating garden observatory. Have you been there?
Oh, the Omeda Sky Building.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so that building is in uptown Osaka, so more in kind of the business district. And you can go to the very top up a big set of escalators. And it's an amazing view, just 360-degree panoramic view of Osaka from the top. So we went at nighttime and seeing the city all lit up and just stretching on for kilometres. It really puts into perspective how big these cities are, particularly compared to little old Perth.
Wow, that'd be a sight for sure. Is there anything up there? Like, can you eat and drink up there, or is it literally you go up there and it's a garden and look out?
We did that about 10 years ago, so I'm not sure if things have changed, but there was a cafe up the top at the time. But when we visited in December, they actually had a little Christmas markets at the bottom of it. So we had gotten a drink and a few little nibbles at the Christmas market at the bottom of that. But never fear, in Japan, you're never too far away from a great meal. There's lots of restaurants in any area you go, even if it's more the uptown area. So don't worry about going hungry in Japan.
Moving on to Kyoto now, tell us a little bit about that and how does that compare to grungy Osaka and bustling Tokyo?
Kyoto feels more like what you would think of traditional Japan. It's not as built up and dense as the other two cities. No huge sprawling masses of neon skyscrapers, but instead it has thousands of temples. And so that's why Kyoto is really, really popular with tourists, and you'll find is on almost every single Japan itinerary, particularly for first timers. It really feels like you're entering into, the more cultural, traditional side of Japan. One of the biggest temples there is Izadera Temple, which is in this area where they have really traditional cobblestoned streets with more Edo-style buildings. And right at the end of this cobblestoned long street with lots of cafes and shops and souvenir stores, you'll find Kiyomizu-dera sitting in this beautiful garden. So I've been there in autumn and also spring, and I highly recommend it all seasons. But that's really one of the most, postcard pictures of Kyoto you'll find. That's that area there.
Are there geishas wandering around? Like, is it that kind of, what you see in the movies?
Probably not in modern day Japan, no. Because of the rise of tourism in Japan, I think it's a lot harder to kind of have those moments. But the area where you might see a geisha or a geisha in training is in the Gion area. I did actually see one on one of my very, very early trips to Japan when we were walking around that area at night. But now it's so busy and full of tourists that I think kind of those fleeting glimpses of geishas aren't as common as you might be led to believe online.
And can you go anywhere to see them? Like, can you book into a tea house? And if that's something that somebody wanted to do?
You can do a show which includes a geisha performance, I believe. I haven't done it personally. I did on my last visit go to a tea house in Kyoto near Kiyomizu-dera, which was an amazing experience. It was a 100-year-old tea house with a beautiful landscaped garden that you got from the view of the garden from the tea house. And tea was served. They're not a geisha, but she is in traditional robes. So you do kind of get to feel that more cultural experience. And it's almost like a piece of art, her pouring the tea with precision, whisking the matcha. It's, as I said, a piece of art in its own way, watching the tea ceremony. So if you're looking for a traditional experience, definitely a geisha performance, I believe, is available for tourists, or doing something like visiting a tea house for a tea ceremony is really special as well. And Kyoto is the place to do that.
And any of these places that we've talked about, Tess, like, are there any smaller towns or off the beaten track places besides the hike that you've mentioned where perhaps visitors might like to move away from the tourist masses and experience something different?
Yeah, one of my highlights of a recent trip was visiting the Japanese Alps. And so the itinerary, and it's quite easy to get to from Osaka or Kyoto. And we visited 3 places, 3 kind of towns or cities within the Japanese Alps, being Kanazawa, which is almost just on the coast, about 2 hours from Kyoto, and then Takayama and Matsumoto. So Kanazawa is called Little Kyoto. So it's sort of like Kyoto on a smaller scale without as many of the crowds. They've got a castle there as well and one of the best gardens in Japan. So if you love the Japanese gardens and, landscape, it's one of the best places to go. From there, we went to Takayama, which again is situated in the mountains by the river. And they've got all these traditional sake breweries along the river in these
Oh.
beautiful Edo period buildings. And so that's a really different and unique experience to do. We had lots of fun tasting many, many kinds of sake.
I imagine that'd be a really fun day out, like, or, experience to have. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Anything else?
And then Matsumoto is the third town that I mentioned in the Japanese Alps that would be great to pair with the other two. And they've got the famous Matsumoto Castle, which is known as the Black Crow because it's got its striking black exterior. So that castle is one of my favorites because you can actually go in it and go to the very top. There's lots of stairs to climb, but they've got historical displays inside the castle. And then at the very top, you've got a 360-degree view of all of Matsumoto and the surrounding mountains. So that was a really cool experience to do that.
And how long would you spend, like, if you wanted to take in those 3 towns, could you do them all in a couple of days? How long would you spend there?
We spent 3 nights in Kanazawa, 2 nights in Takayama, and 1 in Matsumoto. And I think that's probably what I would recommend, at least doing a couple of nights in Kanazawa and Takayama each, and then 1 night in Matsumoto. So 5 days at a bare minimum.
So the Japanese Grand Prix is on at the end of March. Cherry blossoms wouldn't have started then? When do they typically?
The cherry blossoms usually begin blooming in Tokyo for reference because it changes throughout different locations in the country, but they actually start blooming in Tokyo at the end of March, start of April,
Okay.
and a little bit in Osaka and Kyoto. So that's more, instead of late March, it's more early April for those 2 cities. So that's actually probably right on cherry blossom season time.
With visiting the cherry blossoms, is that a bookable experience or is it just you just go to a certain place? Tell us about that.
There's definitely some well-known cherry blossom hotspots. However, I think one of the best things about Japan is just wandering around on foot and, finding your own unknown hotspots. So there's definitely the kind of really well-known locations in each city, which, if you look online, Tokyo cherry blossoms or Osaka cherry blossoms, you'll find the well-known ones. But I think if you're just exploring the city, naturally you're going to come across cherry blossoms and they tend to be around. So yeah, there's no need to specifically go on, an organized tour or anything like that. You can visit them yourself, just catching the subway and maybe stumble upon them randomly on your adventures along the way.
Mhm. And the Japanese people are known to be very polite and quiet and respectful. What's some etiquette that Australians and Western travellers might not be aware of that they should perhaps know about before going to Japan?
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's a couple of things that are unique to Japan. So, for example, as I mentioned, it's sort of rude to walk and eat. So, in Australia, you wouldn't think twice about doing that. But in Japan, you'll find places where you get street food will ask you to stay in front of the stall and eat it there. Likewise, in Japan, when you walk around, you very rarely see rubbish bins out on the street. So in Japan, it's very much an individual's personal accountability to take care of their trash. You might have to take your trash home with you and dispose of it that way. So after a day of exploring, unless we came across a bin in the train station or something, I'd come home with, a little plastic bag full of rubbish that I would dispose of in our hotel room. So it's just little things like that which catch you unawares until you travel there for the first time.
I've heard the same thing as far as trash goes. At the Suzuka circuit itself, littering is frowned upon at the track, and the Japanese fans are very much respectful and exactly like you said, Tess, it's expected that you take your rubbish home with you.
Yeah, it's crazy when you walk around the streets of the city, whether that's Tokyo, Kyoto or Osaka, and yeah, there's no rubbish. It's spotless for such a huge, sprawling metropolis, particularly like Tokyo. It's surprising. It goes a long way if you just learn a few basic phrases in Japan. One you might hear a lot is arigatou gozaimasu, which is thank you very much. So for me, I like to just learn, I guess you could say that for anywhere you go, but in Japan, it's really nice if you can just learn a few of the basic phrases such as, hello, goodbye, thank you very much, excuse me, arigatou, thank you very much, good afternoon. Yeah, it goes a long way.
It's always a good tip. It's anywhere you go, I think. It's a nice thing to do, to learn, hello, goodbye, thank you, the basic words wherever you're visiting. As far as crowds and queuing up, what's the culture like in Japan? In Italy, for example, Italians can't queue. Must be something in their DNA. It's just they just gather at a bus stop, for example, and the bus comes and they all try to go in at once. Whereas in England, People queue very orderly. It's frowned upon if you jump a queue in a store or at a bus stop or anywhere. What's it like in Japan?
As in all things Japanese, it's very orderly and which I absolutely love. We sometimes joke that it's not a good restaurant in Japan unless there's a queue. Sometimes we're tempted just to jump in a big queue because you know the food's going to be good. And we've definitely done our fair share of queuing up to get into some of our favorite ramen restaurants and the like. So yes, in Japan, queues are to be expected. However, it's very orderly, very organized, and you'll find they generally move pretty quickly.
And I've seen you post something about 7-Elevens. Like, tell us about 7-Elevens in Japan.
7-Elevens in Japan are a destination in their own right. They're this magical thing where you can get incredible food, weirdly enough. So I wouldn't think that I would travel to a new country and go eat at a convenience store. But in Japan, usually as soon as we land, the first thing I'd do is go to 7-Eleven and get a snack or treat. They do, your basic things like coffee. They do things like egg sandos, which make for a great breakfast. But they also have microwave meals. So after a big day walking, getting in your 20,000 steps, it can be really good just to have a really quick and easy and convenient, but also tasty dinner. And so they've got lots of pre-made meals that you can microwave in the store. They even have smoothie machines. You can buy a little container of, it's like a berry mix, and then you make a smoothie in the store. They've got all kinds of amazing Japanese treats. So I make it my mission every time I go to try something new. Because a lot of the time you don't know what you're eating unless you're using Google Translate. So it's part of the fun. They've got amazing ice creams. Yeah, 7-Elevens are a lot of fun. So definitely make a beeline to a 7-Eleven. There's also Lawson's, which is another big chain in Japan that's very popular. You'll find a convenience store on almost every corner. So they call them konbini in Japan.
Wow. Gosh, who knew? From what you describe, it sounds like you should go out of your way to go and find a 7-Eleven, not just stop by if it's convenient.
Well, you won't need to go very far out of your way. As I said, they're on every single corner in Japan. So if you walk more than 100 meters without seeing one, I would be shocked, particularly in the bigger cities.
Amazing. Is there anything else about Japan that people should know? I mean, are credit cards accepted everywhere as lots of other modern destinations, or, do you need to still carry cash like for some of those smaller places and markets?
So since COVID, I have found in my more recent trips, a lot more places are taking card. Japan used to be very much heavily reliant on cash. I would say that even today, even though a lot of more places do take card, you'll still need some cash. So you'll definitely want to make sure you have a debit card that you can get cash out from. Luckily, at 7-Elevens, the 7-Eleven ATMs, you'll find one or two in every store, and they take international cards. It's also fee-free ATM withdrawals for MasterCard and a very small fee of 110 yen, so about $1 for Visa. So it's a really easy and convenient way to get cash out. So definitely have some cash on you, although more places do take cards these days.
That's a good tip.
And then my other tip would be to make use of Japan's amazing luggage forwarding service.
Oh, this sounds amazing. Tell us, how does it work, and where do you book it? And yeah.
It's so easy. As I said, it's just another one of those amazing, efficient things about Japan. So instead of having to lug your big suitcases after you've done heaps of shopping halfway across the country, what you can do is use the luggage forwarding service. There's a few different businesses that do it. The main one is called Takubin. But if you go to your hotel reception, they will know what you're talking about if you say luggage forwarding. All you do is fill out a form with where you want your luggage to go. The person at reception of the hotel will be able to help you do it. You pay a small fee. I think for us it was around $20 or $30 to send our baggage from Tokyo to Osaka, for example. And then it's basically next day delivery. So it makes it really convenient. If you had a big suitcase that you didn't want to take on the train, you can just forward it ahead of time to your next location. And you could just take like an overnight bag to get through that one night. Or, if you had two suitcases, send one forward and only take one with you. So it makes it so easy and convenient to travel, particularly if you're worried about, getting in the Shinkansen and public transport with big suitcases.
That does sound convenient. And could you do it the other way? Like if you were picking up souvenirs during your travels and then you still had some time in Japan, but you didn't want to carry all that stuff, could you get it transported to the airport and have it waiting for you before your flight back?
Yeah, you can. There
Oh,
is
good.
luggage forwarding to the airport, and I believe they can hold it for a longer period of time. So you don't have to do it, you don't pick it up the next day. I think you've got a week or two that you can have it waiting at the airport for you. So again, just so efficient. Nowhere else I would feel that comfortable sending my bags, but in Japan, yeah, it's a no-brainer really.
There was some where were we? In Venice, in Italy. I was looking for luggage storage. So, what it's like when you've got an evening flight and you have to check out of your accommodation at 10 a.m. and then you've got a whole day to fill before you go to the airport. You don't want to be stuck with your luggage. But I looked at them and I thought, I'm not leaving my stuff there. Like, there was just, the security didn't look great. It just looked like a dodgy little convenience store. And I was like, I'm not so sure I'd do that. But Japan sounds rock solid. Great. Well, wonderful. Tess Moone of Tess Somewhere, full of amazing tips and just a wealth of information on things to see and do in Japan around those cities that are very easily connected to the Suzuka circuit if you're going there for the Grand Prix. There's direct transport to Suzuka from Tokyo, Kyoto, Nagoya, Osaka. So you could choose to stay in any of those cities. Nagoya is probably the closest. And there's lots of information about getting to and from the circuit. And there's some things that you need to be cautious of. And just know that after qualifying and after the race itself, the local train stations, you could be waiting 3 hours. Like, some of the research I've been doing says it's better to walk an hour than try to get on some of these trains in the small stations because they're just not equipped to move that many people all at one go. So I think getting to the track, because that's a bit more of a staggered start. People arrive at different times. The other unique thing about the Japanese Grand Prix that, look, I'm really looking forward to seeing the day I get there is the Japanese fans. Like, they dress up to go to the Grand Prix. They embrace the whole Formula One culture. They make friendship bracelets, but Formula One themed ones, a bit like the Swifties do for Taylor Swift, and they exchange them with people. They create their own F1 merch that they swap with other fans. I don't think there's any other race in the world that has that kind of level of fandom, but the Japanese fans at the Grand Prix are renowned for it. If you've been to the Japanese Grand Prix, I'd love to hear your thoughts and any quirks that you came across of the fans. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please rate it and like it and send it to anybody you know who's thinking about going to the Japanese Grand Prix. This would be a really good reference for them. We'd love you to follow us on social media. You can find us everywhere. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Thank you very much, Tess Somewhere. So that's Tess Somewhere, just TESSOMEware.com. And Tess's website is full of awesome information. If you ever want to travel to Western Australia and Japan, definitely worth checking out. Tess, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and sharing all your great info.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. I thought that we would try something different. I really want to provide valuable information for you guys, for your travels to any Grand Prix races. What did you think of this episode? Was it useful? Was it helpful? Is it something that we should do more of? I would love your feedback. You can drop us a line at hello@awaywegopodcast.com. Tell me on social media what you thought. Leave a comment on YouTube. Should I get more travel experts on for more in-depth episodes like this about travelling to Grand Prix races? Let me know what you think. Thanks for having us in your ears. Until next week, and until lights out.
It's lights out and away we go.
Away We Go podcast is produced by Diane Bortoletto.